Hi, everyone. This is Megan Grace, and this is an introduction that's happening with all of you about 45 minutes into a conversation with the beautiful Bronwyn Simons. Say hello to her. Hi, Bronwyn.
Hi, Megan.
Hi. We have been laughing and trying to deal with all kinds of visitors and distractions and just a lot
Yeah,
of kind of course corrections happening
it's
here, and
I
hopefully
mean,
we're
that's
starting
the
now.
astrology of right now. It really is. We're in the
Is
middle
it?
of a Mercury retrograde. It's eclipse season. We've got other powerful things going on in the sky. Course correction, like you were saying, just finding the humor in it because we are going to get pulled off track.
Yeah,
And um, it's also
here we
Gemini
go.
season, so lots of talking. Some of it with direction, some not. Yeah,
Well, the
it's all good
title
though.
of this month's new moon activation could be New Moon Activation and Solar Eclipse. And
Yes.
the fact that those two are happening right at the same time or on top of each other is, we decided, was a great place to start
Yeah.
our conversation. So take it away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the big news this week, right? We're right in the middle of eclipse season. So once every 6 months, the sun and the moon meet up close to the lunar nodes. And that means it's time for eclipses. And sometimes it's a big deal and we can see the eclipses from where we live on Earth. And sometimes we don't even know about it, but there are always a series of eclipses every 6 months. And astrologically, that's always important. This eclipse season is particularly dramatic. And there's always a series within eclipse seasons where you at least have one lunar eclipse and then one solar eclipse. Lunar eclipses always happen on the full moon, and solar eclipses always happen on the new moon. Those are the conditions that we need in order to have an eclipse. So that's why it works out that way. Um, but as astrologers, we think about what sign is the eclipse happening in? What other planets are getting in on the conversation? We think about which of the lunar nodes is involved because the nodes are really important sensitive points in the chart, and they talk about whether that eclipse is a manifesting eclipse or a releasing eclipse,
Mm.
right? South node releases, north node manifests. It's the head and tail of the dragon, and they're always connected. It's where we go in and out of the energetic realms.
Mm.
So that's what happens during eclipse season. And that's why it's this period of time, even if you don't know that eclipses are happening. Um, and in many cultures, these are times when we plan special ritual and ceremony. Those windows of time, 2 weeks or 4 weeks between eclipses, because it's a period of time when the veils are thin. Right, we've opened up those portals between us and the energetic realms. The luminaries, sun and moon, have opened those portals. So I there's a lot of drama around eclipses when if you just like following the astrology online. I personally find these to be very magical liminal times when if there is a change that you're hoping for, they are times of change and that can be dramatic. But I
Is that
think
why you think, is that why there's fear, I think, attached to eclipses? Because it's like, oh no, what's going to happen? And this fear of change and sudden change and change that
yeah,
we didn't necessarily welcome. Is
yeah.
that true about eclipses, or is that sort of a felt sense or a superstition that's kind of been
Yeah,
handed down?
it's such a good question. I think it's yes and yes,
Okay.
because these are times of dramatic change that we see in our inner and outer worlds, that the eclipse mirrors that. And I think that fear is kind of mixed with awe, and it goes deep back in human history because these are times when we see drama in the sky. If you've watched a lunar eclipse, for people who were able to witness that, it was too overcast here on the West Coast, it almost
Mhm.
always is. But if you've seen a lunar eclipse, a full lunar eclipse, to see the moon turn blood red and disappear, to see a solar eclipse, as many of us got to a couple of years ago, it's eerie and awe inspiring. And it takes us back to that kind of primal fear that is really close to awe because we're witnessing something so unusual.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that sort of almost an ancestral tie-in of this natural awe in the face of such a strange natural phenomenon. But I think there's also an energy that we all feel with that, and that's kind of what adds to the eeriness, is we know we're in this kind of otherworldly space around the eclipses. And whether or not you see that drama in the sky, you kind of feel that eeriness, that open door. We were
Mm-hmm.
just talking about feeling the spirits in the room before. It's things like that are afoot during these
Mm-hmm.
times. So I think to draw that line between awe and respect and fear is really important. Like fear moves into a place of superstition where we worry something bad's going to happen because it's the eclipse. But and that I think I want to comfort people about it. Astrology isn't like that. Really, we can think of the skies as mirroring and mentoring the inner changes that we're going through. So it's not like, oh, this big power is going to come and do something to me. That is superstition. Um, but again, just to remind people that this is about being mirrored by the cosmos and by the natural cycles, and that we are a part of these changes, and that the reason that we feel that energy is because we're all swimming in the same energy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not that the sun and moon are causing something, that the eclipse causes something. It mirrors an internal experience. So these are eerie times, they're transformative times, but they're powerful times when we can participate in that energy. And if there are things that we want to change, things that we want to move through in our lives, things that we would like to see literally eclipsed, right? That's the question to ask, because they can be times when things leave and enter our lives. Like my teacher would always say, it's like a strobe light, or like if somebody turns the lights off in a room and then turns them back on suddenly. Something's a little bit different, but you don't know what. And it's kind of, it can be disturbing, that strobe effect.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot. It's a lot. And we see the drama in the world around us. But I think bringing it back to the simple interpretation of what's happening with the eclipse, what sign is it in this case, Gemini. So we're talking about our minds, our communication, our belief systems. Which node is it on? So that lunar eclipse in Sagittarius Gemini 2 weeks ago on the full moon was on the south node. So that asked us to lunar eclipse emotions, to surrender or release an emotional pattern. And then now we've had this portal between the eclipses, and the solar eclipse is going to ask us to finish that release so that we can start to build new patterns of communication, belief, and thought in order to move forward more effectively. So you see how I'm just putting together keywords about the node, the sign, and the
Mm-hmm.
luminary.
And is the space in between these 2 weeks is more like you're getting a key,
Yes.
and how you, I don't know, conduct yourself, how you entertain this period of time will affect, I don't know, how you
Yeah.
move through that next portal that's coming on this new moon,
Yeah.
June 10th, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And in cultures where they really, I want to give an anecdotal example that I think is really good. So I'm practicing Tibetan Buddhist, and the lamas, and I will also say that I only know a very little bit about Tibetan astrology, which is very different than Western astrology, although there are common areas. And some of the common areas are honoring eclipses and understanding that portal, that time between eclipses. In Western astrology, there's a lot more fear around eclipses, and we're kind of taught to avoid doing things during that eclipse portal. The Tibetan approach, at least, and I'm not an expert here again, but what I have witnessed is that there's an honoring of that opening up of that space. For instance, a few years ago at our Buddhist center, we had spent a few years building this beautiful shrine to house this golden Buddha statue. When the building was completed, there was lamas came from all over, and there was a ceremony to consecrate the building. And the ceremony happened right after a solar eclipse. See if I get this right. It was right on an eclipse at the beginning of eclipse season. So this beautiful ceremony going into the eclipse season. And then after the consecration, the shrine was closed and sealed. It's almost like, the police tape sealing, only it was red ribbon.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't go in there until we were out of the eclipse portal, and then it was opened up. So this is a beautiful story that kind of tells about the magic of that space that we're in. We bring in something on the eclipse that opens that eclipse season. And then there's this magical inner work that happens that we need to honor because it's kind of happening closed off from the world and outside of time. And then when we exit the eclipse portal, that season is over, we can open that up again, and something maybe ineffable and hard to talk about, but very real and magical has happened, and things have changed. So I like that story because it isn't about fear at all. It's about magic, and it's about the sacred, and it's about the unknown, but not in a frightening way.
Mm-hmm.
So I think about that every eclipse season. And of course, there's someone at the door. So I'm having a little bit of a shoe buying thing going on lately. That was a new pair of shoes.
Yay! That's a good thing.
Oh, look, it's another pair of shoes.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, that's what that was.
Okay.
So eclipse season. So the idea being, we can use this energy to do this really magical inner work. And how we enter and exit eclipse season is dictated by the vibe, the energy, the significations of the eclipses at the beginning and the end. So this season, we started out with a Sagittarius full moon eclipse on the south node. So that asks us to surrender and release beliefs, ideologies that we really want to hold on to, visions that we really want to hold on to release them in order to make space for better thought structures. So I'm getting that from Sagittarius Gemini, right?
Okay.
Mutable signs, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. So we've traveled through these 2 weeks, and maybe you've had experiences of rethinking, negotiating with other people about what you believe or what the communication structures are going to be. I know I've had some of that going on in my marriage right now. Just like, okay, we need to restructure the way we communicate. So it could be showing up in those ways because Gemini is also our communication. Sagittarius is our beliefs and our wisdom.
Okay.
Gemini, which sits opposite it, is our communication and our information coming in that leads to that wisdom and belief. So that's how Sag Gemini work together. So we've been playing on that axis, playing there with how do I communicate? How do I bring in information? How does that lead to wisdom and belief? And am I holding on to some things that I could let go of to restructure? I have found myself looking at belief structures that I put in place in my early 20s because at that time they were really exciting and radical to me, things that I'd never thought about before. And this funny thing happens over time where your exciting new radical beliefs become these set in stone conservative beliefs just because you hold on to them for 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing some personal work in this eclipse portal of like thinking about my feminism, and is the feminism that I embraced in the 80s as a second wave young feminist woman. It was so exciting and new at the time, and it was so important that we held those beliefs at that time. But the world has moved on, and I need to relinquish some of those and get with the program and listen to what the younger people are saying, and change my own belief systems. So I've been doing a lot of that thinking. So this is the kind of thing that you might find yourself doing, rethinking your own old belief systems and giving some of them up in order to replace them with new, better ones. You might be negotiating your communication with other people. It might be not even a process that you can articulate, but this change that you feel just about the way you want to approach wisdom or approach belief and faith. And that's the opportunity that's open for us right now. And because it's mutable signs, we're really, it's like, it's such a beautiful opportunity. It's like if you've ever done any sculpting with clay, you got to work while it's open and wet because it's going to dry, it's going to solidify. So you have only a certain amount of time to work with it while it's plastic and
And are
malleable.
different signs working in this area that you're talking about, but do
Yeah.
different signs feel it in different ways? I mean, would everybody's kind of working with their belief structures, but would it show up different for a Gemini than a Virgo, than a Taurus, than a
100%.
Sagittarius? Okay.
So this is where it's useful to talk about what we were talking about before we started recording, which is the three, what they're called modalities that a sign can be. So we've talked about the elements, right? There's 4 of them, and the signs can be one of the 4 elements. This is separate from that. These are modalities. They're called cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And every one of the 12 signs belongs to one of those modalities. What they really are is an expression of where in the story does that sign, where does it fall, and what is its job? The job of cardinal signs is to begin things. So they are the beginning of the story of each season. We have Cancer begins summer. And then we have Libra that begins autumn, and Capricorn that begins winter, and Aries that begins spring. These are the cardinal signs, they begin things. And you will find that in your personality if you have a lot of placements in cardinal signs. You love the beginning of things. You think about the Aries and Cancer people that you know. They may be very different because those signs have very different qualities, but they both love to start things. Cancer people love to start emotional stories. Aries people love to start like visionary fire stories. And so on. So cardinal fixed, that's us, Tauruses. We hold up the middle of things. So the middle of summer, Leo, the middle of spring, Taurus, when everything's blooming, Leo, when the sun is shining, the middle of fall, Scorpio, when all the leaves are rotting on the ground. And the middle of winter, Aquarius, when those cold winds are blowing across the plain, right? Fixed people like to maintain the status quo, and that's our job. And then the mutables need to bring change. So that's where we're sitting now, is in the mutable season while the sun is in Gemini. It's the end for us in the Northern Hemisphere. It's the end of the season of spring. We're going to be beginning summer. And the energy is shifting and changing around us. That's what happens during the mutable seasons. And if you know people with lots of mutable placements, that's the Sagittarians, the Geminis, right? The Virgos and the Pisces. They like to bring change.
So each of the 3 modalities has 4 signs in it, correct?
Right.
Because that's how you get to 12.
Yeah.
If you were looking at the kind of the zodiac circle and seeing those pies, then you'd have, you're saying that of the 4 that fit, for example, in the cardinal, the 2 in the middle, are those 2 the cardinal ones? And then the first one is the fixed and the last one is the mutable? I don't know.
So beginning, middle, and end, cardinal, fixed, mutable. So if we look at the wheel of the year in the Northern Hemisphere, if we look at the wheel of the year, we have 4 seasons. And each of the 4 seasons tells a 3-part story. And that's how it rolls.
Got
so
it.
If we start at Aries, Aries begins spring. So we have Aries, cardinal, Taurus, fixed, Gemini, mutable. And we go Cancer, cardinal, Leo, fixed, Virgo, mutable. And so it goes through all 4 seasons. So cardinal, fixed, mutable, and then it repeats. Cardinal, fixed, mutable, and repeats 4 times throughout the year. So it's like 4 volumes of a book,
Mhm.
and each of those volumes has 3 chapters.
A
And each of
beginning,
those
a middle,
volumes
and
is a
an end.
season.
Yeah.
It's a season.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, there's so much more that I could say about this because it's really key to how we as individuals travel through our year. I teach a
Mhm.
whole class about this, about planning according to your makeup of your chart,
Mhm.
because the year for each of us is going to feel really different.
Mhm.
And our peak energy moments and our lower energy moments, and when we should rest and when we should push, it's going to feel really different according to our chart. But also, we can all flow along with that story of the seasons. And now is a time of letting go because we're moving out of spring and into summer. And it's a powerful time of letting go because we happen to have this Gemini eclipse season.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's a lot of mutability. And that's why that scatteredness that we were feeling when these guys didn't get to see it. But it was like,
Yeah.
first of all, I came
Mhm.
on the call and there were like 17 things that I didn't have. So I was jumping up and getting this and getting that. And my notes were flying all over. It was scattered like there was a big wind blowing through, is how
Mhm.
it felt.
Mhm.
And I'm a lot more at ease when that happens. Like, it's Gemini season, it's a Mercury retrograde, and it's eclipse season. I'm not going to critique myself for being scattered because it's
Mhm.
what's happening out there.
Mhm.
Once
Mhm.
we get into Cancer, we're going to be like, oh, you know what? I want to make my plans for summer and start things and really start to feel into this. And it's, we, if you stop and notice those stories, those little books of each season with their 3 chapters, you really start to feel it. And that's, if you get into the flow of it, then you're getting into the flow of cyclical natural time, and your life is just going to go more easily.
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a way of thinking about our own personality, but it's also a way of thinking about the flow of time and how we can fit into the flow of time in a more natural way.
But the natural universal law, if you will, is for change and cycles to happen.
Yeah.
So the question is then, is it by nature, you could say, easier for mutable signs to do change, or is that not
Yes.
necessarily the case? Okay.
Yes, 100%.
Okay.
Okay, first of all, I'll say I think it's really hard for all humans to do change,
Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
mutable people of all of us are better at it. So
Mm-hmm.
that said, everybody's chart is a mixture. You can
Mm-hmm.
do like a little calculation and see, like, am I a little bit more of this? Like, I have a lot of fixed placements in my chart, but I have a Gemini ascendant, and that's kind of like a saving grace because all of this Taurus Scorpio that's like, I don't want to change. And the Gemini ascendant is like, come on, it'll be okay.
Yeah.
So everyone has a different balance, and it's really fun to find out what that is for you,
Mm-hmm.
and it'll resonate with you when you find out. But
Yeah.
we each have our skills, and I think this is another thing about this culture too. It's like we in this culture we really value the cardinal people because
Mm-hmm.
they're really strong beginners and like strong manifestors, and we're, think about it, like we're bringing in the energy of the season with a cardinal sign,
Mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of strength to that. Look at your Capricorns, your Aries. These are really powerful people that begin things in a powerful way, and the culture really values and rewards that.
Mm-hmm.
The mutables, not so much, because change is hard, and the change bringers, it's like the shoot the messenger thing. It's like the people who bring the change aren't always the ones that are lauded for it.
Mm-hmm.
um, and because there is that, like a Gemini often goes through life doing this for a few years and then doing that for a few years, and then they're over here doing this. Same with Pisces. Actually, all of the mutables, Virgos are earth, so they're a little more steady for mutable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a way to start to think about valuing yourself no matter if you fit with the tone of the culture or not.
Mm-hmm.
And there's some ways that fixed signs are really rewarded too, but then it's hard for us when it comes time to change. Out of everybody, those of us with strong fixed placements are like, no, don't make me change. So that's hard. There's challenges and gifts with each one, and I think it's helpful. So yeah, for the mutables, they do have an easier time with change, but I think what I'm trying to say is there's less cultural approval of being a mutable person. So it kind of balances out because they're really good at change, but at the same time, they might feel like they're out of step with how things are supposed to be. They maybe haven't lived in the same house for 30 years, or they haven't had the same career for 25 years. They've tried this, they've tried that. They've dropped out of this in order to start that. They're serial entrepreneurs. They're the big visionaries that give their ideas to other people and then go on and have another idea. Um, so there's some reward for that and also some criticism of being inconsistent or
Mm-hmm.
flaky
Mm-hmm.
even.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the nature of mutability. That's what they're supposed to do. And it's such a gift to
Mm-hmm.
have that. So we would hope that we all know what the balance is for each of us and which parts of ourselves are fixed and which are mutable, which are cardinal. And then again, you can work with your own energies in a way that's going to be more effective.
Yeah, that's
So
what I
instead
was
of,
thinking when you were
yeah,
talking. It's like through awareness of knowing that this is
yeah,
kind of where at certain times this is going to play to your strength and you want to
yeah,
capitalize on this aspect of being mutable or fixed or
yeah,
cardinal. And at other times you want to go, listen, you got to know that this is kind of a energy that might be dragging you or holding you back or kind of pushing you in a direction that you need to mitigate to the extent
yeah,
possible.
yeah. And in personal relationships, it's really important too. Like it's really important to know what is your partner's makeup as far as that goes, because we can end up criticizing each other for things that are, I mean, we all know this in
Mm-hmm.
relationship, but I'm a Taurus that's married to a Sagittarius. So we've got strong fixed with strong mutable.
Mm-hmm.
And ideally that works really well together because I can hold the things that need to be held together and he can bring the visionary change. And at its best, that's what works. But there are inevitably times when it's like he feels like I'm stuck or being too slow, and I feel like he's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
But it helps me to accept that and to roll with that and to work with it in positive ways because I know I'm like, he's a Sag.
Yeah.
That's the gift he's bringing to the world is that visionary change and always wanting to go around the next corner. I
Mm-hmm.
remember the first time I went for a walk on the beach with him. My thing, Taurus, Cancer, when I'm on the beach, I'm like looking down at the waves on my toes and all of the shells, and I want to stop and like look at this one shell or lie on this warm rock. He's a Sag. He's like, maybe there's a really great cove right around that next.
Yeah.
And that's just how it goes with us. Like he's always like, what's around the next corner? And I'm always like, look at this beautiful, don't you want to lie down on this rock?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And those are both
Mm-hmm.
gifts of being in the world.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's good to know those things about yourself. It's good to know them about others and learn to embrace them. And good to know them about the times that we're in. We're in mutable times. So again, if you're feeling anxious, if you're feeling scattered, if you can't get yourself to start something right now,
Mm-hmm.
um, or if the thing that you built seems to be falling away, those are all really natural things to happen during mutable time. Then we get to
So
start
what
fresh.
what is the course for us then, knowing that that's the energy that's happening? How do we navigate this if
Mhm.
you're feeling some of those things that you just
Yeah,
named?
yeah. Phew, it's such a good question. I think,
So would then what node we're in, whether it's a time of action or a time of letting go, be an
yeah.
indication of that?
And we're
Okay.
still in this portal, right? Because well, maybe by the time people are watching this, the eclipse will have happened, but we're recording on Monday now and the eclipse is on Thursday. So we're
Mm-hmm.
still in that, right? The temple is still sealed.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I like that idea.
yeah. But the sun, it's a north node eclipse with the sun. So this is what I'm saying is we've traveled from release to manifestation. Not
Mm-hmm.
every eclipse season goes that way. Sometimes it's the other way around. So we're traveling through the energetic realms right now to the point where with the new moon, then we're going to really want to think about um, what do we want to bring in. Now we've spent this 2 weeks really rethinking and being willing to change our minds. This is so key right now, even for those of us with tons of fixed placements that don't like to change our minds. Now is
Mm-hmm.
really the time and the opportunity to change our minds, to change out of non functional belief systems or thought patterns. This is really the call. So, yes, it might be uncomfortable. I guess that's what I want to say about that. Yes, it might feel scattered. You might feel like you have notes on 10 different pieces of paper and they're flying around the room.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. It's not going to settle for a little while. This is the time of change. Think what you want to release into that wind that's taking your notes and flying them off the table.
Mm-hmm.
And then these next few weeks, starting with the eclipse and then leading into the Cancer ingress on the 20th. So really those 10 days between the 10th and the 20th, we're closing out the spring season. We can think about what we want to bring in. So I've let go of this communication pattern, of this belief system, of this old stale way of thinking about things. But I'm willing to just sit in this space for a while and invite the new thing in. And the solar eclipse in Gemini on the North Node is the beginning of that invitation. What am I going to open up to and call in? It doesn't mean you have to do it right then. It means that you're opening up that space. Okay, it's like when you declutter your house. I've got this beautiful, like these empty shelves and these empty boxes, and I don't want to fill it up right away. I want to think and curate carefully what I put back into that space.
It's so interesting that you say that, because I'm really feeling that like things are falling away. Not so much obviously physical things, but just ideas. I like find myself sitting and contemplating, you know what, I don't even think that anymore.
Yep.
But I don't have a replaced belief system yet. And that's really uncomfortable. It'd be easier to say, you know what, I decided X was not the right way. It's not what I believe anymore, because now I believe this. When I'm more is like, I don't know what I believe. And it's more than a little uncomfortable.
And it's a good place to be. It's a good place to be, because you're right. That's so interesting. So often when we replace a belief system, it's because something else has become so compelling.
Exactly.
And we're persuaded. And this is an opportunity to really let that faith and belief rise up from within, instead of being seduced and persuaded by something outside of us. And absolutely, that empty space is uncomfortable. It always is. And feeling like, you know what, I don't have a point of view on that, because I just let go of my old point of view of it. That's not a comfortable place to be either. And none of us want to admit that we don't know something. But I think that that's a place to sit in for all of us, to just sit in that, I don't know. I haven't decided yet. And it's a way to honor other people as well. Like, we spend so much time being so sure of our opinions and our faiths and all of it, really. All of our ideas, we're so sure. But it's a gift if you think of sitting with somebody who's like, I don't know. I have to think about it. I'm not sure where I land on that. It deserves respect and thought.
Yeah. So for June 10th, is there any specific little ritual or ceremony or practice that we should use? But it sounds like it's June 10th to the 20th, to the summer solstice. But that's also another where we should expect to feel kind of a transition into this being ready to embrace or step into whatever we're manifesting idea-wise now.
Yeah.
Over that course of time. It's not like we're going to wake up on June 11th and be like, I'm ready to go.
Not at all. And it really is, in many ways, it's like the next 6 months too, like until the next eclipse season. So an eclipse new moon, which we get once every 6 months, is a little bit different in the way you want to approach it in terms of ceremony.
Okay.
Because these are such potent times, I really recommend that you maybe don't do your usual intention setting, at least not until the moon has taken some light. So maybe wait until it's crescent moon, like 3 or 4 days out. Eclipses are super potent times, and it's times when those big archetypal cosmic energies are working on us, and we kind of want to just step back and be like, okay, I'm just listening. And continuing to hold that space of not knowing. I think that's really what I would recommend. I always think it's a nice idea to do our new moon altars and to set something up to invite the energy in. And oftentimes I will encourage like having a specific ceremony and specific intention setting. It's not great to do that on eclipses, unless you really know what you're doing. That's, like I said, leave it to the lamas, right?
Mhm.
I'm planning to just set up a really simple altar that's almost empty to kind of help to
Oh,
hold that
that's
space.
interesting. That's a
Yeah.
great idea.
So that's my recommendation ceremony wise is don't just be in a place of simplicity, openness, readiness. And, some people like to meditate through that eclipse hour. You can sleep. It's just to be in that place where you're kind of honoring that some big energy is passing through,
Mhm.
and you're kind of in that state of awe, like you would be if there was, a great teacher that was you
Mhm.
just like, okay, I'm just going to be like this until they pass,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So just
Mhm.
be in a place of devotion and quiet and
Reverence.
receptivity. Reverence.
Reverence for the
Yeah.
moment or the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Beautiful word. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reverence.
Okay, it sounds wonderful, and
Yeah.
I love potent times.
Yeah.
I don't
Me
know what
too.
part of my chart. I yearn for them.
Yeah.
The more potent, the more pregnant with
Yeah.
energy, and so in some ways, this feeling of void or
Hmm.
like it's not just nice space. It's not nice emptiness to me. It just feels like in between.
It
Um,
is. Yeah.
and but knowing that correlates with how you're supposed to be feeling, and I suppose is a weird way to say it, but knowing that it fits with the cycle and where we're moving, it helps, because you kind of spend too much time up in here
Yeah.
taking yourself and your own experiences way too personally.
Yeah.
So it feels better to, put it into the context of this whole big experiment that we're all doing here
It's kind of a
called life.
relief, right? Like I don't have to hold all of this.
Yep. Yeah.
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 Yeah, and it is an experiment. This
Yeah.
this experiment on the human plane. My goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we were going to sum up, and before we finish up for this
Yeah.
time, is it, and I think next time we're going to try to talk about the squaring of Saturn and
Yeah.
Uranus, right?
Yeah.
And that's a big topic unto itself.
It
But
is, and it flavors all of 2021. So
okay.
we talked about it a little bit in February. Um, I could give people like just a little preview reel. This is another important transit that's happening now, like the beginning of next week. And we will talk about it next time because it's still very much active. It's really active all year. But a little bit of homework that you could do in the meantime is think
Hmm.
about where you are at in your decision making, like long term decision making around February of this year, and how you're kind of diving back into those choice points that came up in February. And then if you want to do even bigger work than that, um, thinking back to 1988, 2000, 2001, and then 2008 through 11. 1988, 2000, 2001, and 2008 through 11. And what were the big choice points in your life at that time? And how are you continuing that story right now in your life?
And
So
so do those choice points, is it carrying through with the same idea of cardinal, or like it's moving through a cycle? Like
it is moving through a
there's
cycle.
and that started in 1988?
It started in 1988. It's
Okay.
a 44-year life cycle.
Okay.
So it's huge. And it's a 44-year life cycle around the structures that we built in our lives and how they get disrupted by the flow of life. So the events that you'll find that correlate with those years will be those big rites of passage. And then you'll find some of the other years where it was the breaking apart of that very structure that you put in place. Because these are the two energies that are toggling back and forth: Saturn structures and Uranus, the dramatic disruption and change bringing. So life is made up of these energies, and I think sometimes we look at the story of our own lives and we're like, success, failure, as we assess it. And we even talk about like failed businesses or failed marriages. And I think this is such an unfair way to look at our own histories. And astrology really helps me when I look at those bigger cycles to understand it's about manifestation and release, the building up of structures and the dissolving of structures. Again, taking it back to that idea of the in-breath and the out-breath.
Mm-hmm.
So I would encourage you, as you look back on those dates, to not think, this is when something started and this is when it ended and that's bad. And this is when it began and that's good. Or this is...
More like origin, completion of something rather than...
And completions are challenging.
Mm-hmm.
They don't always look like tying a nice ribbon on this and finishing it. Sometimes a completion is like graduating with honors. Sometimes a completion is like a divorce.
Figuring out you didn't want that degree to
Exactly.
begin with.
Yeah. And it really is all good. And when we look at these big cycles, we can see how the endings lead to the new beginnings. And we have so much judgment about how things should end. And yet we don't practice the art of ending things with grace. So 44-year cycle, we're 3/4 of the way through it. Wow. That's a lot. That's a lot of life to review. And like I said, we'll dig into this a little bit more next time, but just to be thinking about it over the coming month. Like this year is kind of a microcosm of that. In February, so here's the thing to know. You're having one of those years this year, like you had in 88, in 2000, in 2009, 10. It's all the way from 8 to 11. You're having one of those years now. So it's a turning point, but sometimes we don't see it until we're a few years out. So I hope that is inspiring. This is a time when you're building structures or you're dismantling structures and making really important decisions for how your life is going to move forward over the next 11 years. So,
and why is it 11 years? Because
so we're thinking of 1/4 of
cycle?
44.
Okay. All right.
So you know how the moon moves through quarters: new first quarter, full last quarter, 1, 2, 3, 4. So now we're talking about a cyclical story again, but it's a 4-part story with choice points at each of those 4 points.
Okay.
And that's a 44-year cycle. That's Saturn and Uranus dancing together. It takes them 44 years between meetings. They meet up in conjunction.
I get it.
Then they dance together and then they meet up in conjunction again. It takes them 44 years. So in 11 years, we'll start a whole new 44-year cycle.
Mm-hmm. So we did 11, 11, 11, and now starting when does the last quarter start, or when did it?
Right now. That's what this year is.
Okay. All right.
It's like the last quarter. This is it. This year is the last quarter. So remember, when we're talking about the moon, the last quarter is what needs to be released.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So we're making really important choices right now about what, I just feel that in my heart.
Mm-hmm.
The things that we release this year. And this brings it back, Megan, to why this eclipse is so important. What we release in this eclipse window, and this is like the Russian doll effect of astrology, right? These little cycles really resonate out to the bigger cycles. Mm-hmm. So what we're releasing right now in this eclipse window resonates out to the next 11 years of our lives. And this is not to instill like, oh no.
I know, because my first thing is, gosh, what if I get it wrong?
You can't get it wrong.
The wrong thing and keep the, or whatever. This
is the beauty of it, because we are being mentored by these great archetypal forces. They do not let us get it wrong. Okay. This is where the trust and faith thing comes in. It's not our little critical thinking minds that are deciding what we're going to do for the next 11 years. We're being held by these great archetypal forces that are moving around us. And all we really have to do is listen. Like, this is a choice point. This is a release point. You already know in your gut. You, me, we already know.
Mhm.
What needs to be let go of? And it may not be a huge thing. It might not be like a relationship or a business. It might feel like a really small thing right now. Like, I need to let go of this belief. This is holding me back. Or I
Mhm.
need to let go of this particular way of doing things. So it seems small right now, but it's the seed of something that will grow over the next 11 years into, you know what? Because I let go of that seemingly small belief, I was able to grow into this, and then that grew into this, and then this has really affected my life.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening right now. And we do have the decisive wisdom within us. This isn't about, oh no, I have to plan my next 11 years. Forget it. You can't.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
about listening and paying attention to what's coming at you from around you, the people around you,
Yeah.
the little coincidences, the little messages that come in. You know, this phrase, getting into alignment, is so overused, and I kind of
Mhm.
hate it. But also, there's something there about getting in sync with the energies as they are. So it's not even about having more control because we have more awareness. I feel like when we have more awareness, we're moving more into the flow, like into this. There is like a slipstream that makes things easier.
Mhm.
Like, it, we watch the Tour de France every year, and my husband's always trying to tell me about what, when you're riding in a group like that in a peloton, it's
Mhm.
you're greater than the sum of the parts because you're riding in each other's slipstreams. So we're getting into this flow of energy
Mhm.
that is all around us, that the planets also are in. They're not making it. If we're out here trying to control things, it's funny. It really is hard to put words around this, isn't it? So it's
I
not so
get
much
it.
about
Yeah.
us controlling it and having more control, but it's about kind of realizing that if we surrender into the energies, we
Well,
do have
and
more
paying
control.
attention to it works nicer if you lean in right now, or if you lean out, or if you
Yeah.
turn towards. No, now
Yeah.
right now it's time to just sit still. I mean,
Yeah.
it does. It's sort of like dancing. I mean, if somebody can either haul you around the dance floor or you can
Yeah.
kind of, okay, I know this dance right now that we're going to do. I mean,
Yeah.
basically, these are the steps, and
Yeah.
I'm going to follow them the best I
There
can.
is a choreography, there is a
Yes.
current, there is a
Yeah.
slipstream, and you're in it or you're not. And it's
Yeah.
going to be more of a fight if you're
Yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But it's also not that simple to just get aligned. Like, it
Yeah.
just isn't. Which
Yeah.
is why I think I don't love that expression, although I understand
Hmm.
it is about getting into the flow of the energy. But that makes it sound kind of nice and easy, and it's the
Hmm.
work of a lifetime to kind of figure out what that is
Yeah.
and where our will and agency and choice fits into that, and what is the balance between agency and surrender. It's big stuff. These are the big human questions that the planets are always giving us the opportunities to let's say, play with.
Hmm.
Yeah.
And if we don't figure it out, or play well, we'll get another chance next
We will
cycle.
always get another chance.
Yeah.
As soon as next month we get another new moon, and then we get another eclipse season in 6 months, and we
Yeah.
get another Saturn Uranus cycle in 11 years, and around and around and around it goes.
Yeah.
It
Yeah. I
is like a
think just
dance.
taking this line and doing this with it and
Yes.
realizing
It's
this is the way
everything.
it is, it's it is it's a much easier, softer, kinder, and more wise way to think about the way your life is unfolding. It's not going like this, and it's not going
Mm-mm.
like this either.
Mm-mm.
It's like this. Yeah. Or that
That's the
ascending shadow.
reality. That's
Yeah.
what everything else around you is doing.
Yeah.
Oh,
So why
yeah.
not do it too?
Yeah.
Thank you,
Oh,
Bronwyn. As
thanks,
always,
Megan.
much
I
love to
love these
you.
conversations. We always go deep, and I love it. It's
Yeah.
just beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank you so
I
much.
can't
And
wait till next
I know we have so much
time.
exciting to
I
talk
already
about.
know my 88 and 2000 and the other one.
It just comes right to mind, and I'm sure for
Yep.
many of you
Yeah.
listening, you're like, "Oh, yep, I know
Yep.
those."
We'll dig
Yeah.
in next month, okay?
Yeah,
All
we will.
right.
It'll be fun.
Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye.